On this edition of Independent Sources, Haiti, 5 years later, how is the country faring since the devastating earthquake in 2010, and what challenges still remain?
The earthquake was sort of a very shocking event to the system. But unfortunately, that was not even enough to make sure that the system was transformed.
And a language we discovered, how a centuries-old lost language is making a comeback in the New York area.
It's beautiful, it's sweet, it's loving, it's just wonderful language. And it's made from the sounds of the nature.
Those stories and more coming up on Independent Sources. Welcome to Independent Sources, bringing you news from New York's ethnic and immigrant communities. I'm Garry Pierre-Pierre. 5 years ago, a massive earthquake devastated Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti. We take a look at how the country has been struggling to get back on its feet. While most of the people living in makeshift tent cities have found permanent homes, many aid workers have left, and the country is mired in political gridlock. I spoke with Haiti expert Jocelyn Macalla about what lies ahead for this impoverished and politically troubled Caribbean nation. Johnny, it's been 5 years since the earthquake. So where are we in this situation in terms of the homelessness and rebuilding of the country?
Well, I mean, there's been some progress in that respect. I mean, 5 years ago when you went to Haiti, there were quite a huge number of buildings that had been destroyed and rubble was all over the place. Much of the rubble has been removed from Port-au-Prince, except that there has not been very much rebuilding of downtown Port-au-Prince. I mean, you can see that there are areas where there is works that are being done. In fact, the government was supposed to have put a lot of money into rebuilding government institutions to earthquake-resistant standards. But this has taken quite a number of years and time and pressure. But part of the problem is that a lot of the Haitians are complaining that they have not been involved in the rebuilding, that most of the rebuilding effort has gone to foreign institutions, foreign agencies. One of the major beneficiaries of construction business, for example, construction contracts, is Dominican-led institutions.
But do we have firms in Haiti capable of handling such projects?
Well, it appears that the firms in Haiti have never managed in a project that worth more than maybe $10 million or $20 million. But that does not mean that these firms could not have hired
a piece of the action.
Well, they could not have hired people or experts who could, in fact, be integrated within the system. But I think generally what you will find is that the earthquake provided an opportunity for transfer of knowledge and technology to the Haitians. In other words, I mean, it's a given that if there's going to be any progress made in the country, the Haitians have to be at the forefront. If you have people doing it for the Haitians, even though some Haitians may be involved, then what you have is a situation in which the Haitians are always waiting for a handout, not a hand up. And that's part of the problem that we face in Haiti today. So that, if you look at the media reports, the press reports, eventually what you see is that Haiti is still in trouble after 5 years.
But Haiti had been in trouble way before.
Well, that was my point from the very beginning. In other words, the earthquake was sort of a very shocking event to the system. But unfortunately, that was not even enough to make sure that the system was transformed. In other words, that the Haitians themselves transformed and took notice and said, we've got to do something much differently than what we have been doing it before.
From my perspective, I've been going down there very regularly, and I've seen a lot of progress, at least physically. The roads are getting better. You don't see the tent cities and a town square in Champ-de-Mars, the town square, Men's Central Square. There seems to be some improvement. Do you agree?
There has been improvement, there's no doubt about it, except that the underside of this is that since essentially most of the commercial activity has been abandoned in Port-au-Prince itself, in downtown Port-au-Prince.
Moved to Pétionville.
So everything has been moved to Pétionville. So, and with the move to Pétionville has come not only businesses, major corporations. You can notice that brand new hotels have been built in Pétionville. But the fact is that Pétionville itself has become surrounded by shantytowns.
But there's always been shantytown. Like you have this neighborhood.
No, but my point is that it makes business transactions very difficult when you are concentrated in one area. I mean, and I'm sure that you've experienced that as well, that it takes 2 to 3 hours to get from one place to another. And that is not good for business. I mean, in fact, it really doesn't bode well. So you do have you have had some transformation, and I think that the road network is much better today than it was 5 years ago. You can travel up north on the road. You can travel to Mirebalais, to the Central Plateau, to Hache, and so on, and have a good road. You can do south as well. So it's all very good, but it's like Port-au-Prince and Pétionville are bottlenecks, and that is, to some extent, fitting for what happens in Haiti itself.
So what's next? What happens? What does Haiti need to do to move forward?
Well, governance is always an issue. So you do have to have better governance. And Haitians, unfortunately, have not learned to have better governance, have not learned to build what I would say a spirit of compromise. Because building requires compromise. It requires that you put aside your own feelings and look at the common good, and that has not happened.
How do we break the cycle that you're describing here, where the opposition now, once it comes into power, then the new opposition is going to do the same thing that it was done to it?
First, it's not gonna be done overnight. I mean, I think it's part of the psyche, unfortunately, in Haiti that you don't trust the other to do well, and there's a lot of mistrust. So building confidence is going to take a long time. Unfortunately, the institutions that used to step in to build confidence are no longer as strong as they used to be. I mean, for example, the Haitian Roman Catholic Church used to play a major role in building confidence. It no longer has the capacity to do so. Hopefully, perhaps, with the leadership of Pope Francis, there would be a much more active involvement on the part of the Haitian Church. But it's going to take some time. It's going to take a while before Haitians have enough confidence to let go of some of their suspicions of the other person and really say, okay, let's roll up our sleeves and let's really tackle the issues that need to be tackled. So I mentioned governance as one of the issues that needs to be tackled. The fact is that you need to also invest a lot in the people's capacity to understand the reality and to be able to change it. I've said that before and repeated it to anyone who wanted to listen. But you can't build a nation when most of the people in that nation have the equivalent of a third-grade functional education. You can't do that. So
you can't build democracy. You can't build institutions.
You can't build democracy. You can't build institutions, and you don't have. You're not giving the people the tools necessary for them to understand the relationship between them and the land and how they and their actions are destroying the land while they're trying to survive. So I think that but let me emphasize, however, the following. When you've been to Haiti, I've been to Haiti several times, and we've made it our lifetime work, to deal with this country. I'm always blown away by the fact that there are so many opportunities that are not being exploited, to the best of the capacity. But you have a large workforce, for example, or a large
10 million.
unemployed labor force, mostly young people. Now, we're talking about a situation of deforestation that has plagued the country for decades. But I can see how this new labor force, this young labor force, can be employed faithfully in order to make sure that you can preserve the environment. There are other issues, there are other things that this young labor force can do, but unfortunately, and that's where we come to the issue of leadership, the people who are at the head of the country are essentially, and I'm talking about not just the public sector, the private sector as well,
sure.
They are not tapping into this young workforce, and therefore that young workforce that is idle has to figure out what to do, and it gets angry that it's not being used to the best
and also
maximum possible.
The problem is that population is easily manipulated by whomever for their goals and not necessarily a common goal.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it. In other words, I mean, if I'm sitting in a shanty town and I've got no hope of finding a job in the next day or two or in the next year or so, and I may have some modicum of education, but I can't use it because somebody else, I don't have the right connections and so on, I'm going to be frustrated. And frankly, the first thing I want to do, if I'm in that position, is pick up a rock and throw it at somebody, whether that be my neighbor or somebody else. So if I have somebody who says, "Hey, let's go and pick at the National Palace, or let's go pick up the U.S. Embassy, or let's go to pick at whatever," I am gonna go to pick at, because at the very least that gives me instant gratification that I've done something. And I show them that I mean something, that I am somebody. Unfortunately, that's not the way life works.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you very much, Johnny, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Still to come on Independent Sources, we're discovering cultural roots through a lost language. But first, Crystal Lowe with News of the Week.
Thanks, Gary. Here's a look at some headlines from New York's ethnic and community media. Dario de Mexico reports, President Obama's executive action on immigration has many immigrants who qualify for the program working towards meeting all of the requirements. DAPA stands for Deferred Action for Parents of Americans and Lawful Permanent Residents. Immigrants who meet the requirements for the program will receive temporary work permits and will be exempt from deportation for 3 years. Although parents of legal residents stand to reap exciting benefits through the program, some fear that the $465 application fee, along with getting current on their taxes, will prevent them from applying to the program successfully. Bertha Trujillo, an immigration lawyer, says that there will be organizations which will pay the application fee for those who qualify, and that problems with paying taxes can be resolved. A McDonald's in Flushing received worldwide attention last year when 6 Korean seniors were ordered to leave by police after exceeding the restaurant's 20-minute seating time limit. On the anniversary of the incident, the restaurant is making strides to repair its relationship with the neighborhood's Korean seniors. The Korea Times reports that the restaurant has extended their 20-minute seating time limit to an hour, and unless it's rush hour, people are allowed to sit even longer. A senior who denied to disclose his name says there are not many places where it's possible to talk to friends, drink coffee, and eat food when hungry while getting some rest. In the end, McDonald's and Burger King are the only ones to satisfy what we want. And finally, Sinovision reports on Jeff Chien Sing Liao, a New York-based photographer who has spent over a decade capturing and creating composites of impossible city scenes from around the 5 boroughs. With the unique way that Liao photographs his pictures, he is able to convey images that are impossible to capture with traditional photography. Every image is made possible by digitally stitching together 20 to 30 8x10 photographs that are captured within 20 minutes of each other in one location. For the past 2 years, Liao has been focusing specifically on Manhattan. Of all the 5 boroughs, Liao finds photographing Manhattan to be the most difficult. Because the borough is easily one of the most photographed places in the world, he says, it's hard to bring something new and different to most images. Liao's work is on display in an exhibit featuring more than 40 large-scale photographs called Assembled Realities at the Museum of the City of New York from now until February 15, 2015. Those were just a few headlines from the city's ethnic and community media. Independent Sources will be right back.
Welcome back to Independent Sources. Over 1,000 years ago, one language ruled the Inca Empire. Today, Quechua is considered an endangered language, and its remaining speaking population has been largely invisible until now. Elva Ambía, a Brooklyn resident and native Quechuan speaker, has established the New York Quechua Initiative. It's a local cultural organization that aims to raise awareness of and revitalize this fading native tongue. Sarah Pizon reports.
Aling tuta kachung.
Aling tuta kachung.
Kinalyatak kambarpas.
Every week, Elva Ambía welcomes her students to her Park Slope kitchen. Her mission, to revitalize a centuries-old indigenous South American language, Quechua.
Quechua language is the language of my ancestors, the Incas from Peru. It's beautiful, it's sweet, it's loving, it's just wonderful language. And it's made from the sounds of the nature.
Michael Abbott is one of her most advanced students, and he's been studying Quechua for no more than 2 years.
Manasasachu. It's not hard. It's not hard at all. You add suffixes to the words and then it grows a little bit longer. Also, the word order is a little bit different. So the verb is placed at the end of the sentence in Quechua. But it's a matter of just being a little adventurous sometimes, and Elva is very good at that.
Ambía learned Quechua from her parents growing up in Chincheros, a small rural town southeast of Lima. Quechua was the official language of the Inca Empire. It stretched across the Andean chain of mountains from Ecuador to Argentina. As Spain's influence grew following the colonization of the Americas in the 16th century, so did the dominance of Spanish. Over the years, Quechua began to disappear. This is a phenomenon Juliet Blevin studies. She is an expert on endangered languages at the City University of New York.
It's always difficult to say what the major factors are when a language isn't passed from one generation to the next. But in this case, probably urbanization and economic factors that result in people thinking that if they speak Spanish, they'll have better opportunities, are playing a major role.
Eventually, Quechua was stigmatized by the Spanish conquerors, who felt it was an unsophisticated language and should only be spoken by the uneducated.
There was, in a way, this racism. There were lots of prejudice against the people who came from the provinces speaking Quechua. When they come to Lima, they will put the Quechua behind. Everybody was ashamed to speak it. They were mistreated, like they will be called cholos. Cholos is a derogative word to say ignorant, not welcome.
Nonetheless, it's estimated that there are between 8 to 10 million speakers worldwide.
Of all the languages in the Americas, Quechua has the best chance for revitalizing itself. It has so many native speakers, they're spread all over the world. And in New York City, the estimates are about 8 to 10,000 speakers. It's been growing through immigration, but it has not been growing through new speakers learning the language.
Even with these numbers, New York's Quechuan-speaking community has been largely invisible for decades, something Ambía discovered when she moved here in the mid-1960s.
I have nobody to speak to me in Quechua. So, and since I also have to work and raise my children here, I put the language behind me.
Things changed in 2010 when she participated in a committee to set up a multilingual center at the Grand Army Plaza Library in Brooklyn. The only book mentioning the Quechua language was this small booklet of phrases.
That made me angry. And I said, no way. We had to do something about it.
So she had her brother-in-law send Quechuan books from Bolivia and donated them to the library. Then she met Naomi Stern, a folklorist who helped her start the NY Quechua Initiative. Stern worked with Ambía's son, Andrés, on Peruvian art in the city, and he insisted she meet his mother.
When I did meet Elva, she actually had a list ready. I remember I came in, I thought I was coming to band practice, and she said, Naomi, would you come over here? I need to talk to you about some grants. And I said, oh my goodness, this lady's ready.
Together with Christine Janey, they launched a cultural organization in 2012.
So we had the idea, we had the place, we had the books. What was missing was a big rally, big party to introduce these books to the community.
These raimis, or parties, are now monthly events where Quechuan music is played and the culture celebrated. Ambía's son is the founder of Incaraiku. His band performs at all of the raimis.
It's important as far as identity is concerned for us to show, this is where we're from. It's a very poetic language. There's usually double meanings. You get all of this as you're singing. And of course it's pride, the same thing is pride in our culture and, the Quechua culture.
Elva students not only learn and practice the Quechua language through talking and interacting with one another, they do so through singing. Elva says she kept the language alive through playing old tapes of Quechuan music. It had a major impact on her children, especially her son.
I didn't realize that until, and he didn't realize neither, until he became a big performer. And one day in the library we were performing, he said, thanks for all the music that I heard that my mother had. I listened to those, and that must have made a big impact in my life, and that's why I love this music very much, he said, and that really made me very, very proud and hopeful.
Hopeful that the dignity of the Quechua language will be forever restored. For Independent Sources, I'm Sarah Pizon.
When we come back, a radio program devoted to keeping another near-extinct language alive. Finally, from us, another indigenous language is falling by the wayside. Kichwa, a variant of Quechua, is losing favor with Ecuadorians hoping to assimilate quickly into the mainstream. This has created language discrepancies even within families. Our Sarah Pizon spoke with Charlie Uruchima, a master's student at NYU's Quechua program. He co-founded Kichwa Hatari last year, a radio show in the Bronx that addresses all things Kichwan.
Thanks for being with us, Charlie.
Thank you for having me.
So Charlie, tell us a little bit about your radio show. What types of programs do you have on there?
So the radio program is called Kichwa Hatari, and it's all in Kichwa, and it's the first radio program in Kichwa in the United States. And basically we touch social and cultural themes that relate to the Kichwa community, both living here in New York and also in Ecuador, and also migrant communities outside of Ecuador, like in Spain, there are a lot in Europe generally.
And do you have any co-hosts?
Yeah, I have two co-hosts. One of them is Segundo Gamarca. He's from Cañar, and he's a native Quechua speaker, and also Fabián Muenala, who's also a native Quechua speaker from Ecuador.
Very neat. Before we go on, let's take a look at a clip from your professor at NYU.
Okay.
Many people were deported only because they cannot express adequately in Spanish. When they are in courthouse, for example, they cannot explain why they are illegals or whatever. They speak mixing the native language with Spanish. So we are training Charlie in order to work as translator interpreter in some district court in Queens for these people, especially with people from Ecuador.
So Charlie, how do you address this issue on your show?
Well, the show was founded for that, from that same exact reason. Basically, the need for there being attention, the need for cultural sensitivity in institutions in New York, such as the courts, in hospitals as well, and in schools. And it was throughout this process of outreach into the schools, into the communities, that I met people like Segundo and also another person who actually used to teach Quechua in Cañar back in Ecuador. And he sort of taught me some Quechua and helped me sort of meet more people from the community, such as Segundo. And then Segundo already had his own radio station, and he sort of shared the same ideas that I had, and shared the same concerns for a while now. And so it just seemed like the perfect moment to start like a project like the radio program.
How big is the Quechua or Quechua community in New York?
Because it hasn't received enough attention, it hasn't really been, how can I say it, hasn't been recognized as a language itself. There are no statistics. So usually, you know, when you see like censuses, they say like people speak this and this language in New York, and there's an other. So usually Quechua is under that other. if it is even recognized. But there are sort of church estimates that if you just Google it, it'll tell you it's about 8 to 12 million, 12,000 Quechua Quechua speakers in the New York tri-state area.
Wow. So besides language isolation issues, I guess, what other issues are pertaining to this community?
Just sort of getting around, sort of being understood. Like I said, I think in the courts that's a big issue, because not being able to acquire the necessary type of interpretation that's needed in the courts, that allows you to not be able to sort of find that agency and sort of share your story in the court systems. So a lot of people, because of these reasons, like my professor said, are eventually deported or are just not understood at all.
And so there's your radio station broadcasts in Kichwa, but there's also Quechua. So what's the difference? Quechua, Kichwa?
So Quechua is the language family. Quechua is the native Incan language, I guess you can say. And it's used to sort of classify Quechua and Kichwa from Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, parts of Colombia, parts of Chile, parts of Argentina. And there are 8 to 12 million speakers. But Kichwa is a variant within that Quechua language.
And they can be understood by both. It's easy to understand.
Yeah. It's actually interesting when people, for example, Kichwa from Ecuador, Kichwa people from Ecuador get together with Quechua speakers from Peru, and they start talking. They're like, "Oh, wait, we actually understand each other. It's not so different."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And so, what's been the feedback from the community here in New York, from your radio station?
Feedback has been, I think, really good. I think people are starting to recognize the fact that Kichwa exists, at least symbolically, in the city. And the radio as sort of like a source or sort of a way for people to get together and share their experiences around Kichwa, around the language, and around the culture as well, living here in New York City as migrants.
And why is it important for you to keep this language alive?
For me, I mean, I think it's more than just the language. I think it's also the culture. I think it's also a way of thinking, because Kichwa, I know somebody who's taught me this as well. Like Kichwa can't really be interpreted. The Kichwa way of living cannot be interpreted sometimes into Spanish or in English. So I think preserving that and sort of bringing that here into New York, and even being able to sort of contribute to this mosaic of cultures that is New York City, then I think it should be preserved.
And so when and where can we catch your show?
So Kichwa Hatari can be caught on radioaltambostereo.com. Every Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. We also have a live stream. We live stream the show every week. And the link for that is more specific. So we also have a Facebook where we always put news updates from our shows and also talk about the guests who are coming in that week. The Facebook is Kichwa Hatari, NY.
Great. Well, thank you for being with us, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you.
That's our show this week. Thanks for watching. Till next time, be independent-minded.